Hi, everyone. Somebody sent me a comment about my recent video where I discuss the poem and then I get into the rhyme scheme. And I wanted to put this video out there because I think it's going to show a couple of points that I wanted to address as far as using software on the internet. The English language is complicated. And as you know, a computer program is only as good as the person who wrote that program. Computers by themselves don't have any intelligence at all. Everything they're doing was obviously created by the programmer that implemented the software. And the English language is very complicated, especially when it comes to rhymes. They're all different types of rhymes. It's not as easy as just looking at a word because you can't tell by the spelling. It has to do with the phonetics. And there are some college universities that have developed libraries that make an attempt to do it, and they're still not accurate. And that's pretty much why you don't really find any websites out there that will automatically go through text and find words that rhyme, for example, because it doesn't necessarily work. But somebody did send me one site that they found, and I wanted to just show you to kind of prove my point here. So I'm not going to go over this again in detail, but here's basically the rhyme scheme that I came up with. And as you know, stanza 5 rhymes back to stanza 3, and stanza 6 rhymes back to stanza 1. We all know that. We know about the internal rhymes, there, where, there. Okay, and we have there here, but this is not referring to a location, so I didn't include that. So basically, we know all that. We also know from my last video that the first two lines of the stanza are actually referring back up to here. So they're describing essentially this part up here where we're putting in below. We're putting in below all that. And we know that that's the case because the first line here says from there. So there, in this case, is referring to where we put ourselves in, to a position below the Homer Brown. So he's giving us perspective, kind of like if you were in the sky and you said, "Oh, from there, from up in the sky, the people look like ants, and look how tiny the cars look." So you're describing another place from your current position. We also know that there's a tense change here. This is telling you what's going to be in your future. So we already kind of know that this maps back to the stanza. Okay, so stanza 5 is going back to stanza 3, and the first half of stanza 3 is referring back to stanza 2. We already know that. I don't want to go over that again. Here, you'll notice that I have halt and walk listed as rhyming. And obviously, everybody points that out because they don't really rhyme, but they do. They do. It's called a slant rhyme, okay, or a near rhyme. Because if you listen to the AL, the vowel part of it, it's halt, walk, okay? So that's how it's rhyming, halt and walk. It's not a pure rhyme like bold and old, okay, would be, for example, or meek and creek, right? So there is a difference, but they kind of do rhyme. And Forrest Fenn said that he was limited. He was limited because he had to use these two words. Otherwise, what he's telling you to do wouldn't work. Let me show you the results of a website, and then I'll show you that website. This is what the person had sent to me. So if you look at what that website came up with as far as the rhyme scheme, you'll notice some differences here. Okay, this is still the same. Okay, this is still the same down here, but we have a difference down here, and we have one difference over here, and over here you'll notice an X. Now let me explain the X. When you're going through and numbering your rhymes, in some poems, they're going to be at the end of the line, it's not going to rhyme with anything in the poem. And in that case, you have a choice. You could come up with a letter, and that, of course, would only be the only line that would have that single letter. But what a lot of people tend to do also, mainly songwriters and rappers especially, is they'll notify it with an X, and they never use an X anywhere else with rhymes. An X would indicate this line rhymes with nothing in the poem. So basically, what that algorithm on that website is telling you is that halt doesn't rhyme with anything. So that's why they got their lettering different than mine. But what they are doing down here that I didn't do is they're saying that meek and creek and seek and weak rhyme with walk. Now, They're doing that because, like I said before, these are pure rhymes, Meek and Creek, for example. But they have these things called consonant rhymes, okay? And a consonant rhyme is when there's a consonant in the middle or the end of a line that rhymes with another word. For example, if I said he stood on the road, you know, stood and road could be considered rhyming because of the D sound, the D, the consonant at the end of the line. So if you look at it that way, because of the K sound in walk, walk, you could say it does rhyme with meek and creek, okay? And of course, seek and weak. So in that case, it does rhyme. I would agree with them that. I don't really think it matters so much, though, because we already know that this stanza is referring back anyway. If you have this rhyme listed the way they do, it only reinforces that the fact that this stanza and this stanza are referring back to the first part of the second stanza. It just helps reinforce that because of the rhyme scheme. So whether or not you want to do that, of course, is up to you. But it is kind of weird. And one thing that I want to point out is that meek, creek, seek, and weak are pure rhymes. Walk is not a pure rhyme with meek and creek and seek and weak. It would be a consonant rhyme. So all of a sudden you're using pure rhymes, and then you're going to start in the same rhyme sequence, use a consonant. Whether or not you think that's valid, it's totally up to you. No computer program is going to be able to figure that out for you. So you could make your choice up for that. But one of the things that I do like, and again, it sort of has that same problem, is if you look at the last stanza, they're rhyming every single line back up to the first stanza, not just the parts that I'm rhyming with the B's that go up to bold and old. They're rhyming all of the lines. Now, and all of them are consonant rhymes in that case, because you look at good, cold, wood, and gold, like you can hear the ending is a T sound. Cold, good, wood, gold. So that's why they're rhyming them all back with all the lines. I don't really think it matters. I think it's either way, you know what's going on here. This stanza is telling you to go back and do what the poem is telling you to do. So either way you express it, it's still the same thing. So he's saying, so hear me all, listen, good would bring you back up to as I have gone alone in there. He wants you to do that. Begin doing what he's saying. And then on the next line, of course, he's saying your effort will be worth the cold. And as you know, the cold is referring back to treasure's fold. So if you do these two things, this first part is telling you essentially to do what he did up here. Okay. And these two lines are telling you how to do it. He's telling you to be brave and in the wood. So we're going to be brave by taking treasures in there, and it's going to reveal the secret where. And then, of course, the last line, I give you title to the gold, would take you back to hint of riches new and old. Okay. So the title to the gold is the hint of riches new and old, which rhymes back to treasures fold. So either way, you're going to end up back at the same situation where he wants you to use stanza one. So anyway, I like the fact that that person pointed this out to me, because I hadn't considered the consonant rhymes down here. And if I would have, I probably would have used it, because it actually makes what I'm trying to explain to you a little bit easier and a little bit better. But overall, you could still see that it came up with relatively the same thing that I did, okay? Which, of course, means it's going to lead you to the same conclusion that I came up with. But when I said that it has a problem again, you do have the kind of a weirdness going on again, because cold and gold also rhyme with the vowel sound, not only the consonant. So it's again a pure rhyme: cold, gold, bold, old. All four of those words are true rhymes. Okay, but good and wood, all of a sudden you're switching to consonant rhymes. That's why I didn't go with the B, 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 and I ended up choosing something else for good and wood, because I thought that when I showed it to you, it's just going to complicate things, and it's going to make it look like I'm bending the poem to fit what I'm trying to, accomplish. And that's not the case. But so the choice is yours on how you want to treat it. I think, like I said, you're going to come to the same conclusion. that basically you have to take treasures and bring it down into the canyon in the poem, and then it's going to reveal the secret where, which in turn tells you where warm water salt is. And that's basically the gist of the whole thing of what's going on here when you read the poem. And I don't think it matters which way you do it. Okay. But that was the only site, by the way. I tried looking for other sites after they sent me that, and I can't find any. I did find some Python libraries and stuff from, I think, Stanford University, where I can actually write some code. But if you read the comments of the code, it's telling you that it doesn't really work all that well because of the fact that there's so many different rhymes. You can't just break a word down into its phonetical parts and then try to match those up because it's still it doesn't work like that because of the fact where I'm talking to you have different types of rhyme. You have consonant rhymes, alliterations, you have uh, true rhymes, slant rhymes. It just gets really complicated. And the English language itself, of course, is very complicated. So it's very hard for a computer to do that. That's why when you hear like a lot of text to speech algorithms out there, they don't really sound all that good. They don't stress the right syllables because the stress changes based on the context and how the words are used. And the computers are just not, it's just very, very difficult to make something that you could just throw any text at it. Right. If you wanted to sit there and generate an algorithm that works on a specific piece of text or a couple of specific pieces, that's fine. But somebody's going to throw something at it, and it's just not going to work, and it's gonna wind up sounding really silly. So let me show you that site. So here's that website. It's keytopoetry.com, and they have a poem analyzer. You can click analyze a poem online, and just right off the bat, I can show you here. I'm not going to spend too much time here. You could play around with it yourself, but I'll paste the entire Forrest Fenn poem in there. Okay, so I got all 6 stanzas pasted in there, and I'll tell it to analyze it. And I'll show you some of the funny things. Here's where it came up with the rhyme scheme. Okay, A B X C D C D E D E F G F G. Now look at what it did here. It screwed up. For some reason, it's counting one of the blank lines, and I don't know why it's doing that. It should be H D H D and then a space and then B B B B. So there's problems with this code, obviously. And if you look down here, a number of stanzas, 1. That doesn't make any sense either. The 828 symbols per stanza, that's obviously wrong. So you got to take these things with a grain of salt. So they're good to play around with, but you got to look at it as a human and come back and do your own analysis after you do this because clearly the computer's not going to get it right and right off the bat. So anyway, before I go, I want to show you one other thing. This I've seen this before, and it was running on Stanford's website. Here, it's running on a different website, but this is basically the Berkeley neural parser that takes and goes through and tags basically text, and it breaks it down to show you the syntactic structure. It decomposes everything down into subphrases. It's really good. A lot of guys I might want to take a look at it. But be careful with this stuff because it doesn't always get everything right. But anyway, I thought that you might find it interesting, so I included it in this video here. And let's plug in stanza 2, uh, and we'll tell it to parse it. And as you can see, it generates a nice chart, breaks everything down, beginning with the first sentence. It breaks everything down into phrases and subphrases. It'll tell you what they're functioning as. For example, like I explained to you guys, begin it is an imperative, and that's actually the end of the independent clause. That's all he's telling you to do in the first part of the stanzas. Begin it. Where warm water salt and take it in the canyon down, not far but too far to walk, is part of a where clause. Okay, it's a dependent clause. All of this stuff here is all a dependent clause that's telling you where to start. But it's kind of cool, and you can see it here clearly. I mean, warm waters is the noun phrase that's the subject for both halt and take. And again, if you could find it, I think it's gone. It was on Stanford University, but you could run it through the same thing, and it'll show you, and it'll give you an idea, at least a starting point, before you start breaking sentences down yourself to see how everything's functioning. And here you can see it's telling you that this is functioning as an adverb phrase. And then it breaks it down even more. Adverb phrase here, another adverb phrase here. And then it's telling you that to walk um, is basically a 2 plus infinitive. It's working as a verb phrase, and it's showing you that here, but it's kind of showing you how everything would connect. All right. It's not drawing all the lines like I did, so you can't necessarily see what's modifying what, but it's a really good starting point, and I think you guys would like it. And out of all the parsers you're going to find, Berkeley and Google probably have the best. So let me show you Google's. This one I already knew about years ago. This one here is at cloud.google.com/natural-language. And they have a demo, right? So what you do is go in the demo, and I wouldn't suggest pasting the whole poem in here. It's probably not going to work. So since I have it in my clipboard, I'll plug in stanza 2 again into here and just show you how it would interpret the same stanza, right? So you would click analyze, tell it that you're not a robot. Yeah, come down here, click syntax, and there's your tree, right? I probably should have got rid of the second part. Let me go ahead and do that, actually. I'll get rid of the second one and just leave one sentence in there so it doesn't confuse everything. So there you can see, begin it. Okay, so this is the direct object, it. He's telling you what to begin. What do I begin? I begin it. This is beginning the adverb phrase where warm water, salt, and take. And you can see how everything is being connected up here, right? So all of that is tied to these compound verbs because begin is telling you to begin it where these two things occur, okay? So that's why you see it attached to the verb. So like I said, this is a dependent clause. Begin it is an independent clause. And basically, you're going to begin it. Where am I going to begin it? You're going to begin it where warm water, salt, and take it in the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk. That's where you're going to begin it. You're not going to go down the canyon. So this is another one that's kind of showing you that. There are many more like this, and some of them are not always up all the time, but a lot of them also are just they're really bad. There is a really nice one that was running, I think, in Germany. Unfortunately, no, it was running in Sweden. That's right. Unfortunately, it's down. But what that one would do is it would analyze it, but it knows that there are multiple ways that things could be broken down. So it shows you different potential options. You know, Google isn't doing that. Google is just saying this is the way it is. And unfortunately for Google, it's wrong in many cases. It's not wrong here, but I've seen it wrong in many cases because the English language is very, very hard. And you got to remember again that it's only looking at one stanza. It's not looking at the whole poem. And also some of the other ones out there have problems with contractions. So you have to break the words into two separate words. They choke if you don't do that. But anyway, have fun with this stuff over the weekend. That's really all I wanted to say. I think that these third-party sites are good, but you just got to take them with a grain of salt. You're not going to find anything that's going to be any different, really, than what I've already showed you. Obviously, if you do, be sure to mention it in the comments because, you know, one of the difficulties about working with grammar or working with poetry and stuff is, well, there's two problems. One, if you try to get somebody that's a professional to help you, they're not going to do it because they're going to assume that you're a student or you're in college and you're trying to get somebody to do your homework. The other problem you're going to have is a lot of people, they just don't want to discuss poetry and grammar because it's not their gig. And I totally understand that. Unfortunately, you're kind of in your own little shell and you're trying to do all this work on your own. It becomes very difficult. So one of the ways that you could work around that I use a lot, and I've been using it throughout my whole career. If you run into a problem when you're looking for a solution, don't use just one source. Try to find multiple places and then look at them to form a general consensus. Because not one single place is always going to be right. You're going to find contradicting information. So what you need to do is look at 2 or 3 places and try to come up with your own analysis. And you determine based on what you know about the poem. Remember, it's a poem. So that's another thing. There's rhyme schemes and other things. that come into play when you're solving Forrest Fenn's poem. So you can't just simply use Alexa and it's going to do all the work for you. It doesn't work like that. A computer program is not going to be any better than the person who programmed it. And unfortunately, a lot of stuff on the web is developed by students who are not experts. And if they are developed by experts, they're probably going to charge you to use it. And you're also going to find out, like I said, the English language is very, very, very complicated. A computer trying to learn and understand the computing language is what Google's trying to do here. And if you just listen to things like text to speech and stuff, you can see how bad a lot of this technology is. It's not done yet. It's not ready yet. And, especially when they're reading back text, they don't understand the patterns and how to stress can change in a word. You can't just look at a word and say it's always stressed like this, because where it appears in the sentence is going to change the stress of that word, especially when it's a single syllable word. All right. Because the stress will change based on where it sits. All right. So the computer doesn't know that. The program will know that. But my God, it's so difficult. You can't just even break things down into phonetic spelling and create an algorithm to try to use just the phonetics. It doesn't work that way, because some things have completely different phonetic spellings and they still might rhyme. So, and believe me, there's a lot of people trying to do this, because if they can automate rhyming, you could probably make millions of dollars just in the rap industry alone, because everybody's trying to get words and they don't know how to rhyme. That's why you got Word Hippo and Rhyme Zone and all these other places. But one of the things I was never able to find is a website that you could give it 2 or 3 words and have it tell you, do those words rhyme? There's no place that I can find that does that. I did find some algorithms that do it, but I implemented them and used the code for them and ran them myself. It just tells you right when you're reading the description of it that it doesn't always work, and there's a lot of issues, because essentially what you end up having to do is make your own database, and I'm not going to put that kind of an effort into doing this. I really don't care. I'm not trying to develop a product. I'm just trying to solve a poem. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great weekend. Hope this stuff, play around with it. Hopefully it helps you with something, and have a good week. Peace.